Hey everyone, today I wanted to make a quick video on error handling in n8n. This is a question I get quite often, mainly because I think people get interested in n8n and building out the cool workflows. But when it comes down to making professional workflows, especially if you're working for clients or your own job slash business, this is just something that we can't avoid. How do we handle errors when we have thousands of executions running? The reality of it is that sometimes workflows are going to fail, whether, an API goes down or a service isn't working as expected. This is just a situation that you're going to have to figure out how to deal with, especially as you start to build more and more complex workflows. So I want to show you a couple of the main examples that I personally use and a good starting point for learning how to handle errors for simple workflows in n8n. So the first one I want to show you is node level error handling. So let's take an example. I'll add in trigger manually. Actually, just do it with the Google Drive node. And what we can do is go to settings. The first one that you'll want to know about is retry on fail. So if I turn this on, you'll see I'll get a couple more options. And here's where I can set max number of tries as well as a wait time in between each try. So for example, maybe if you're accessing an API and it potentially doesn't hit that endpoint or it doesn't deliver the response, what you can do is check it multiple times. So I can say, all right, let's try it, 5 different times and then potentially wait some time in between. So I can select like, 5,000 milliseconds. But for this particular node, it's going to try the API 5 times and then it's going to wait some time in between. So that way we can check and that way we can make sure that it continues to run. So maybe in the next run, it will actually be able to get the response. So that's one way, being able to retry and fail. I'll turn this off and I'll show you the next version. If you take a look at this section right here on error, the default option is to just stop the workflow. And I guess this is good in dev/test, but if you have, if you're running production workflows, you want something a bit more robust. So if I select the drop down, one option that we have is to just continue on with the workflow, and that way it will pass a message into the next node. So it will be apparent in the input, and that way you can debug from there. The other option you have is to continue and have an error output. So if I select that and exit out of the node, what you'll see is that now I have a success path and then an error path. So in this situation, what I can do is maybe pass it over to an AI agent and do, whatever work that needs to get done. But in the error situation, go to Gmail and say, I can send a message and have it say error. And then you can, pull in whatever errors that you got into the email. That's just an example of a route that you could take. But this whole path of, succeeding and, taking one path and then erroring out and sending a message to Slack or email is an option that you have. So that's one that I use quite often. So that's a little bit about node level error handling. Let's take a look at another option, which is a stop and error node. So this will throw an error and allow you to take action upon it. But in this situation, what I can do is look up stop and error. So if I take a look at the error type, I can either throw a message or I can output an object. And, here I can type in whatever message I want to output. But then the stop and error is one that can be useful in particular scenarios, especially if you're using logic like the if node, etc. So that's one node that we can use to be able to error handle. And then the last one I want to show you, I'll pull it up here. So if I type in the error trigger, now, what this is going to require is a whole separate workflow. So I'll show you what that looks like. But this is the node that we're going to be working with. So I'll go back into my demo workspace. I'll save this workflow and I'll create a new workflow. So I'll call this master error handling, and then I'll add in that error trigger. And from here, we can call this workflow, take some actions upon it. So let's just say, again, we can type in Gmail and have I'll type in send, and then we can, again, have this say error and whatever message that we want, right? So this is the workflow that the error trigger will carry on. So I'll go back into the original workflow that we're working on together. I'm actually just going to edit this because I can't publish with the manual trigger. So I'll add in a form submission. I'll just call it, just some random stuff. So now that I've got my node in here, what I can do is publish it. We'll have to publish it before we can actually attach it to the error workflow that we created together. And now that our workflow is published, I'll exit out of this. And in this top right section, in the settings section, this is how we attach our current workflow to the error workflow that we created together that will handle any errors that come up. So I'll select settings. I'll go to the section right here. And then what you'll see in this drop down, oh, okay, it must be published before using. Okay, so I just forgot to publish that. So we'll go back into the master error handling, publish this. Let me just delete this, publish that, and then we'll be good to go. So now when we go back into that workspace, we should be able to attach it. Boom. Just like that, we can have that saved. So now every time that this workflow errors out, it's going to go into the other error trigger workflow and then carry on the logic for how you want to handle that. So those are the core ways that we can handle errors in n8n. Definitely something that you'll want to start using, especially if you have some complex workflows. I hope this video is helpful. So if you like content that relates to AI, n8n, or automation, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I'll catch you on the next one.